article here at the American Prospect website, I should say, titled "How President Biden Defanged the Left. The White House has used access to quiet would-be progressive critics." But I mean, if you can be curried just by having access to those like people in power, are you really a so-called progressive if you're just willing to sell out the people, the movement who desperately need things like Medicare for all, canceling student loan debt, Green New Deal? If you're willing to just, man, fuck it, that shit's not really that important. I want to have access. I want to be able to, talk to Biden and people, high up in his administration. Like, it's not a very progressive thing to do, right? So I would call people that would engage in that type of behavior who don't necessarily aren't principled in their actually wanting to fight and get these things enacted, if it means no longer having access to the Biden administration. I would consider those people to be the synthetic left, the pseudo left. June 28th, over 500 members of the Sunrise Movement's DC's most vocal youth climate group blockaded the entrance to the White House for hours. Their demands included a fully funded civilian climate corps, a New Deal-style jobs program as part of the admin's infrastructure package, a modest $10 billion CCC, less than one-tenth of the Sunrise's initial vision. So they wanted $100 billion, right? Was part of President Biden's American Jobs Plan proposal when it was first unveiled months earlier. In the emaciated bipartisan infrastructure framework Biden agreed to in June, not $1 remained. In fact, nearly all the major climate commitments, save some money, a fraction of what was proposed for electric vehicles and public transit, were similarly absent from the $579 billion revision. And again, for this, damn, here ain't looking too good today, is it? That's alright. Like, for this to actually be a substantive infrastructure bill, it would have to have been, several trillion with the T dollars, and this is 579 billion. Like, it's not going to do much, basically. Protesters were joined by progressive AOC, Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, and the tone was something new for progressive groups in the Biden area, openly combative. So this was back on June 28th. Over a dozen protesters were arrested. Sunrise members hoisted signs reading, "No climate deal, no compromise, no excuses," and "Biden, you coward, fight for us." I don't necessarily think he's a coward. I just don't think he really, gives a shit. This is who Biden has always been. A corporatist willing to serve the corporations both internationally and domestically through imperialism. There's never really been a war he hasn't liked. Horrible on, he was a big proponent of the crime bill in 94 with the mandatory minimum sentences, the 3 strike laws. His racism and white supremacy are, well documented, unfortunately, going back decades. Rep Bowman on the inadequacy of the new infrastructure proposal was even more direct. Fuck that, but what are these people doing now? Just a few days prior, not outside the White House steps, but on private Zoom call, DC climate groups, along with a wide swath, I like that swath, of senior staffers from major progressive orgs, huddled with White House officials for the unveiling of the very same bipartisan infrastructure deal. Progressive groups met with the White House every other Thursday. This was a special Friday session. Among the groups in attendance was Real Recovery Now, progressive coalition spearheaded by veteran progressive strategist Sasha Brown, former Move On executive director Isla Shaman, highlighted in Political March as the primary entity that would keep pressure on Joe Biden to deliver the most ambitious infrastructure package. An alliance with members from the Center for American Progress Action Fund, Service Employees International Union, Move On, National Domestic Workers Alliance / Care and Action Community, Working Families Party has articulated 4 top priorities on jobs, climate care, and immigration. In rare moments and on fairly niche issues, progressive groups have called out Biden publicly its work, but I mean, it definitely seems accurate, the part about only calling him out on niche issues, right? Or he's calling him out on getting at least the fucking watered down piece of shit public option he campaigned on, or calling him out to cancel student loan debt, which he campaigned on, obviously to a much lesser extent than is needed, or, you know, maybe cutting back the military budget, etc. Across those paramount concerns, Biden's bipartisan infrastructure proposal left out the entirety of the care proposal, offered nothing on immigration, and featured startlingly little on climate. Reconciliation bill that was almost 2 months out. And yet reception featured no four-letter words, no accusations of cowardice. According to sources who were in the meeting, Scheinman was particularly obliging, raising his hand to personally congratulate the admin on the deal. So it's like, yeah, you did a good deal. This watered down thing that doesn't go big enough, doesn't really have the things that we thought we're going to address, but good job anyways, because I'm in here, I'm able to gain access, I'm able to talk with you, we're able to, you know, curry favor with one another, we can take pictures, I'm going to post this on my, you know, Instagram, it's going to be great. This is the meeting for progressives and progressive advocacy orgs, said one advisor close to the White House. The bill doesn't include a single one of his priorities, and yet the tone is incredibly civil. Nobody's even saber-rattling. Biden, meanwhile, was soon pledging not to veto the bipartisan package if it came to his desk without reconciliation bill full of other climate priorities, threatening the absence of major environmental spending to come. And we definitely see this to be true. This part, criticism has been surprisingly in surprisingly short supply during Biden's first 6 months, from a left flank that's been somewhere between docile and uncutus. The fuck? I have to look that up after, add that to my repertoire. Uncutus. DC progressive groups have lavished praise on Joe Biden as the next FDR. When he's indulged some un-FDR-like tendencies, they continue lavishing. The idea of Joe Biden being FDR 2.0 was just a message point without any body of work to back it up. Murshid Zahid, progressive political consultant and former political director of Credo, told me they desperately need the folks who are fired up. The result has been a progressive flank that has been defanged in Biden world. Well, I would say the progressive flank, the synthetic left, the pseudo left, these people who, again, aren't willing to speak truth to power when their person is in office. What's more important for these pseudo leftists, these synthetic progressives, is that they are able to retain these relationships with these people in power, still have good relationships with them, even though if it means, not really speaking about things that they actually claim to support policy-wise. It's because, well, Biden's in there, we get to meet with him, we have these policy meetings on Thursdays, like, how awesome is that? Who really gives a shit if he's not, supporting these things we want him to support? We're in there, like, we're in the room, like, how awesome is that for us? So, fuck you, poors. You don't really need, health care. You don't really need student debt cancellation. Don't really need immigration reform. Don't really need a Green New Deal because, well, we're in here. Yay, we're taking selfies with Biden at these meetings. How awesome. Already, gun control, judicial reform, student debt relief, and much of healthcare and immigration reform have fallen by the wayside, as I was saying. Policing and criminal justice reform is bogged down and seen in endless bipartisan negotiations, with Biden pushing no deadlines for action. Democrats have split on drug pricing, with moderates on the Hill chasing modest tweaks and progressives trying to go big to save hundreds of billions for additional fiscal spending. Disempowered progressive flank. The same thing happened, during Obama's administration with Rahm Emanuel, as the author points to here. Obama's strategy to gag progressive relief on the asperity of his chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel, in a program former blogger Jane Hampshire once coined the veal pen. In a series of weekly meetings between progressive groups, the admin officials called Common Purpose, Obama advisor Eric Smith, the White House comms team, sometimes even Emanuel himself, would impress upon progressive groups their duty not to criticize White House priorities on the bank bailouts, on health care, in the name of message discipline. This kept those groups in the veal pen at risk of cattle prod if they ventured out. And then, so it looks like the Biden administration doing a similar thing, currying favor with the so-called progressive groups, what I would call the synthetic left. These, synthetic progressives are, not willing to speak truth to power against Biden and his administration, completely, abandoning even the really, weak proposals he's campaigned on, because, well, we gotta stay on message, we gotta show a united front, all the while the people get pissed on at best. Manual to release his personal fury, but it looks a little different, in Biden. Well, Manuel would kill progressive with threats. Biden's chief of staff, Ron Klain, is kill progressive with kindness, with even more access and personal discussions. Again, it's good, obviously probably it makes those people feel good. Well, I get to go to the White House, I get to see Ron Klain, I get to see, Joe Biden. Look how awesome is that for me and my own, personal prospects. But again, it's not really serving the movement. These synthetic leftists aren't serving the movement. They're not speaking truth to power. They're not trying to hold the Biden administration accountable for the, watered down policies that he ran on, whether it be healthcare, student debt relief, and the environment, etc. Everyone talks about how it's so much better than before, how they have way more access under Biden, said one White House advisor. There's Klain killing them with kindness while everybody else is just, literally dying because they don't have health care, going bankrupt because of medical debt, drowning in student loan debt, which again Biden could cancel with the swipe of a pen, but because they're being killed with kindness and giving so much access, all that shit just flew right out the fucking window. And that's again why these people are the synthetic left. Let's see. As Biden world whittled away at the family care components of the package, not a single major women's rights group rallied its members in support of the critical issue of universal pre-K, home health care, and child care, or put a call saying that they would not support a bill which these elements were left out. When Biden world left the Domestic Workers Bill of Rights out of the American Families Plan, the National Domestic Workers Alliance instead cheered the domestic work parts of the proposal that did get in. Those pieces vanished from the bipartisan framework. Some reappear in the detailed scant reconciliation bill, despite very little public pressure exerted on the White House from the biggest groups that support it. Again, how in support of you are these people, are these groups, if they're actually not willing to fight for what they say they support? Kind of suspect, right? Even as Biden has refused to lift a finger on H.R. 1, the voting rights bill that was a top priority for a public citizen, the group has refused to strongly criticize him. Ditto, Move On, which continues to blame GOP. It's always the Republicans, those goddamn conservative pieces of shit, which obviously are. Politics are horrible, but Biden could literally get a great deal done by using the bully pulpit, swipe of his pen. Again, he could cancel all fucking student loan debt. But where are these groups? Well, I mean, we're meeting with him and his team so often. We get to go to the White House. They have, an excellent lunch or breakfast or dinner, depending on the time of day, and we're currying favor, man. We're moving this shit right along. Um, yeah. So there you go. I mean, then yeah, you don't have anybody in Congress. So yeah, CPC, the minimum wage not getting raised. Executive actions, Paris Climate Agreement, contract workers. Yeah, middle ground, yes. Canceling student loan debt, revoking pharmaceutical patents to lower drug prices. Um, I mean, I don't know. I was never really had much hope for the Biden administration. I mean, there's a reason that the Democratic establishment propped him up so much because they knew, correctly that he would uphold the status quo, be a loyal servant for capital and, white supremacy, both domestically and abroad, as well as, keeping the war machine fed as well. And again, it's not surprising that these liberal, these democratic groups have been defanged. Whatever fangs they had to begin with are definitely pretty non-existent at this point. But again, I consider these groups, these people who are willing to sell out the movement, sell out the most vulnerable and marginalized in order to continue to have access with the Biden administration. That is completely indefensible, reprehensible in every way, and really, really disgusting. And those groups and people need to be held accountable because that's literally what you're supposed to be there doing, is fighting for those issues, like making sure people have health care, inhabitable planet, immigration reform, voting rights, etc. And you're just, well, go along to get along, and we're currying favor. I mean, no, we don't. Those people aren't on the left. They're part of the synthetic left, the synthetic, progressive movement, and it's disgusting. Like the video if you like the damn video. Subscribe for more content. Peace. Much love. All power to the people.